Good evening. This is Dana Ali, and this is my implementation plan for LDT570 with Professor Dan McDowell. So the first part, Philosopher. So I started out by reading the articles that were on there, except for one that couldn't be found. And then I went on to finish up Innovator's Mindset because I had a few chapters left to go. So I'll talk about the first article here, Teachers as Master Learners by Will Richardson. And in this article, he explains his frustration in regards to the separation between teaching and learning. And the quotes below struck a chord for me, and I'll explain why. The first quote in his article that I found that I could relate to is he said, "What I want are master learners, not master teachers. Learners who see my kids as their apprentice for learning." And that before public schooling, apprenticeship was a way for kids to be educated. And I really find that I have two sons, and they're very hands-on and they're very eager to learn, and I'm grateful that they like school. But at times they have had teachers who are maybe more old school, just sit down and learn what I have to teach you, and that doesn't quite work for them. But also they've had teachers who are enthusiastic about the learning, and it's like a process that they're doing with the child, and so that seems to work better for my kids and more hands-on. So that's how I understood that quote from him. And also he says, kids began to learn not from master doers so much as from master knowers, because we decided there were certain things that every child needed to know in order to be educated. And I think this is not necessarily a good thing. Do we want a child to be solely educated and go out into the world? And are they really going to do well just by being educated? Or do we want them to be well prepared to actually be a doer in the world that we live in? So that's something that had me thinking. I know some adults who are, it's sad to say, but very book smart. And I call those people educated. But do they know how to problem solve? They don't quite know how to do that on their own. But they'll give you, fun facts about, whatever their focus is, their career, if it's engineering, if it's history, but they're not really good problem solvers out there. So I am an educator, obviously, and I'm all for educated people. But for me, as a mother and as an educator, it's also important that my students and my biological kids go out into the world and are able to be doers, not just knowers. Lastly, he says that he wants for his daughter to have a mindset and skills to create new science, not just know old science. And I can relate to that so much. I want my own children to be able to go out and be engineers and scientists and whatever they want to do, not just recite the facts in the textbook, because those are not the skills that they need to be successful in the 21st century. So I enjoyed that article very much. Dan Pink, How Teachers Can Sell the Love of Learning. Oh my God, this was also such a good article. And it had so much good information. So I really had to pull out the things that I deemed most important. So here he basically in this quote talks about making the things that we teach relevant to the children's lives and making a connection to the real world. And that is something that I have been hearing ever since my credential program. So I'm glad this is anything new, really. But that's very important. And that's why at the beginning of the year, I collect like an interest survey, and I kind of see, okay, so I have these group of kids that like to play soccer, and then these kids like comics, and, these other kids play a musical instrument, or, just different things that they're interested in. And I try whenever possible to connect what I'm teaching in science or ELA or Spanish class related to real world, because I just see their little faces light up like, oh yeah, I know what you're talking about because I like soccer. So I try to do that as much as possible, and it really does work. It does make a difference. He talks about moving from transactions to transcending to making something personal, and that is the best way to sell students on what they're learning, and that is absolutely true. And that it has been a recurring theme, connecting what's taught in classrooms to students' personal lives, and that goes back to my first quote and why I do collect an interest survey at the beginning of the school year, because I truly do believe that this is part of selling what I'm teaching to my students, and I want them to come to class because I don't want to be the one up there just lecturing for 15-20 minutes and everything's going over their head. But if I come and plug in something that they can relate to from their real lives, then they're like, oh, okay, I get it. One of the things that I see, he says, as an outsider, so much in education policy is designed for the convenience of adults rather than education for children, and therefore it is heavily standardized. This is something I agree with, I see, I don't like. I don't like standardized testing, and I feel like that takes away and just standardized curriculum. Thankfully, for me at least, at the school where I work at, middle school and upper grade elementary, we don't have a curriculum, so we have to write our own, which I absolutely enjoy the freedom of doing that. However, I don't have complete freedom because I do somewhat have to teach the test. They have to pass the CASP test. So here we are, right now writing a guided essay. Will my students have to write an informative essay? Will they have to write a narrative in the 21st century at their future jobs? Not really. But I still have to teach them that because that is what's going to be tested. Also, I've had some issues as a parent because one of my children is gay, so he kind of thinks outside of the box, and I've really struggled ever since he was in kinder to try whenever possible to move away from just the standardized things, the standardized math curriculum. He's above grade level in math, he always has been, but still all second graders are in the same classroom in elementary school. That's the problem with elementary school. There's not different levels. We don't teach that way. And if we would teach that way, where higher kids of math can go to one class and then maybe they need, more help in writing so they can go to another class, I think that would make a huge difference. At least what I've seen as a parent. But unfortunately, that is not the world we live in at this moment. And then he said this, which I'm going to talk about. He mentioned a boy who was working on improving his writing, and then all of a sudden he's writing for the school newspaper, and so he knows that his peers are going to see what he wrote. So then he was even more motivated to improve his writing. And I will talk about this in my list of things I would like to do in the future, because this gave me an idea. And then IST and the Death of EdTech by Mike Crawley just talks about how we should be providing learning environments for students that give opportunities to enhance deep learning and provide students with the potential to do real and meaningful work, not just simply mimicking, as my students are mimicking now as we write this guided informative essay. But this is not always possible because of the industrial mindset that is driving the schools we work for, unfortunately. So, and it's all to impose efficiency, control solutions, and standardized testing. It's easier for governments, and so that's what we're doing now, which is sad. Then innovators mindset. Oops. Okay. So out of the chapters that I read, 3 stuck out for me. So strength-based leadership, just focusing on the child's strengths so that they can flourish without, of course, ignoring their weaknesses and helping them grow there too. More is less. 100% agree with this. Quality should always override quality, and we should maybe not try to cover so many subjects, at least for me in science is what I'm thinking, because I was talking about this with my coworker today, and maybe dig in deeper into certain science topics. And embracing an open culture, that is more personal for me, because I need to get on Twitter and I need to feel and know that I'm not alone, and that there's a constant global conversation of ideas occurring every single day. I really liked the crowded acceleration innovation talked about, I think, in chapter 3 and then again in chapter 11, how we can be taught, like I self-taught my self-Socratic seminars thanks to YouTube, and then like 4 years ago. And this also raises the bar for excellence and inspires others. I'm trying to hurry up because I see the time's going to run out. So idealist, for me, in my classroom, if I could have it my way, it would be 100% student-centered with my guidance, of course. I would have the 4 C's, the Samar model, and DOK questioning at different levels, but this would be something that would be constant in my classroom, and I'm trying to get there. Then authentic and skill-based assessments. I just love the idea of being able to give 2 or 3 options for an assessment to assess learning. So that's what I mean by that. I want to use more technology, not just for the purpose of using technology, but to enhance student learning. And all this is to prepare students for their future careers. So that means I would like to discontinue the mimicking of the writing process in my classroom, because that does not prepare them for future jobs. And overall, I would just like to model and promote innovators mindset, and we're already doing the growth mindset in my classroom, but I would like to take it a step further. So the dreamer, here's what I have planned, and some things I have already started to implement thanks to the inspiration that this course has given me. So I started using Flipgrid for short responses. My goal is to use it about twice a quarter, and I like it because I tell them that they should script their response before recording it, and we've done it once and they absolutely love it. They will be using Canva for a PSA and Shark Tank, and I will include some examples as you suggested. And I would like to find an answer to students being able to collaborate with Office 365 documents. For the 2021 school year, I would like to use the website that you mentioned in your list of Infogram to help them with infographics, because we tried to make infographics last school year and it totally went over their little 6th grade heads, but I still want to go back to this. I would like to start a classroom blog that my students will take the lead on and update bi-weekly for parents to have access to. And I would like to provide multiple avenues of assessing their understanding using technology and their creativity, like I mentioned earlier. And then for the 2021 and the 22 school year, I would like to take this classroom blog a step further, and I would like to start a school blog by having my 6th graders take a lead on that and make it into an after-school club and invite younger students to participate in this online newspaper magazine that families of our school could have access to, just to keep up to date with the happenings of the school and our events and things like that. And I would like to learn how to provide virtual reality on devices for science class, like to be able to see cells up close and ecosystems. And then I would love to get a Google Educator certification, even though at this time my district does not use Google. We use Office 365, but that is something that's been on my mind for some time now. And this is it. I'm sorry I talk kind of fast, but I only had 15 minutes to do this, and I did not want time to run out without covering all the most important points. And thank you for this amazing experience. I thoroughly enjoyed this course, every minute of it. Everything I read was applicable, and I loved that it inspired me so much, and it was so useful, and I have brought it straight into my classroom. So once again, thank you so much. Goodbye.